Around 16 at least.
Like a month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going live right now.
Colorado.
I think we're-
Helping those kids. I picked up
Watch the score.
14,000 foot mountain
I missed you last Thursday. We had a
the other day. I don't know. I think they
T-Rex
like,
building.
I saw that actually. I was wanting to go to that, but and I was wondering if that was you guys put that on.
Yeah, it was so Bitsby Triple.
I saw that actually. I was wanting to go to that.
Okay.
How often do you do that? You said it was 4 Saturdays, T-Rex.
Like we'll be at Venture Cafe this Thursday.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. So we're gonna go. We're gonna have Brandon here talk about Notoros.io. I'm Wade Crypto on my social media, so co-founder of Crypto World. We have this weekly meetup and educational series once a week here at Crypto World. So every Tuesday, come down and visit us, see the store. We're the first one in the U.S. We had somebody yesterday that was driving from Kansas City through St. Louis down 70 and saw our store. He's getting gas at Quick Trip, and this guy has been in crypto for like 12 years. He said in 2012 he put 100K into Bitcoin and it's held on to it. And so I was watching him drive off with his Tesla X or whatever. It's like pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But he loved the concept. He wanted to do this in Kansas City. I think you guys know we have a huge wait list for people that want to franchise this same model. So we're very excited about this, and I'm sure you guys know that can't really talk about it on social media and stuff, but we got invited to a TV show to talk to pitch Crypto World. So that we're just waiting for the final call on that. Very exciting. So this week we're going to be at the Venture Cafe. So I don't know if you guys, I know Andy Limbaugh, you're there each Thursday, so he'll be out there. But we're going to be talking about, I think it's the foundation of Bitcoin is what they want us to talk about. So we'll be there this Thursday. If you guys don't know where that is, that's in the city over off, I think it's 4200 Duncan Avenue. 4220. So we'll be there this Thursday. We'll be there at 4:30 until about 6:30 is when they have us on. And then next week we also have another Web3 company speaking. I forget the name of the group, but they'll be here next Tuesday also to talk about their project. But I wanted to introduce Muegge Rd here. He's a special guest, and you're the new alderman.
Yep.
New alderman for St. Louis. We also have Ethan Banthey here. He was here last week, and crypto lobbyist that's been very helpful in getting us some crypto bills introduced in the state of Missouri. So thanks, Ethan, for being here today. But Mike, you want to give us a short intro?
Yeah, and I'll also say, thank Ethan for inviting me here today. He's the one that kind of told me about this place, and I think this place is really cool. It's a good idea. Like I am the alderman now of the 28th ward in the city, so that's like Forest Park. I live right next to the cathedral. It goes to the city limits. The wards are getting redrawn next year, and then I'm going to be in the new 9th ward when I run in a year from now. That's actually going to have the Cortex where Venture Cafe is. So pretty much the entire central West End to the Grove, if you guys know the city well. But I think this is a good idea because, like as important as, cyberspace, the internet, all that is in general, I think physical space is also important. Physical meeting space is important. So, I think it makes total sense why you would want to have places like this. But I don't really have much. I just wanted to come and really see what you guys are having and say hi. Like I said, I'm Mike. I'm the new alderman for the 28th ward. I'm excited about, trying to find opportunities to use blockchain technology, Bitcoin, Web3 in general, in municipal governance. I'm excited to try to find ways. I think that if we, can just train our people and our citizens and our residents to be able to use this technology, just if they're using this technology even before other cities, I think that's going to give us a leg up and put us the thing. So I think anything that we can kind of do to really, drive adoption in general is going to be helpful. And I'm looking to do it. And the real specific thing I'm really hoping to do this year on it, I started racking my brain like, well, are there any kind of like laws we can do? Like some cities, it's like you can pay your property taxes in Bitcoin, which like, okay, I guess. But what I want to do is I want to have a hearing. I want to pass a resolution to have a hearing this fall where we get, witnesses. And they'll probably be virtual. All committee hearings are still virtual. So but that's helpful here because we can really get some witnesses from all over the world to talk about, how we can use it on a municipal level and develop our economic development in our city. So stay tuned to that. I think that will, I'm really looking forward. I want to make that a good meeting. I know quite a bit about this kind of stuff, so I'm hoping to get good witnesses there and ask good questions and, not let it get ridiculous or anything. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have going on here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as Mike alluded, the brick and mortar model is something that builds trust and confidence, and that's why we have this store. Somebody yesterday bought 12 ASICs, they're the 104J Bitcoin miners, and he was willing to pay a little bit more because that he knew we were brick and mortar, right? So you could get them cheaper elsewhere online. But because he sees what we're doing here, he sees that we're an actual location, we're not a rug pull or a scam, any of that stuff that you're worried about when you go online. And that's why he invested, close to $70,000 on equipment, is because for that reason. So also, Ballet Wallet is going to have us on their Twitter space. Is that what it's called? Twitter space, I guess. Then this month. So they want us to talk a little bit about a specific project that we did. We were going to high schools and handing out these cold wallets preloaded with Bitcoin, just to try to help educate high school students on, the basics of Bitcoin, why, and also for them to actually go through the process of, opening the wallet up and finding out what's in there, and if they want to transfer it, convert it, do whatever they want with it, they're actually going through the process instead of just hearing somebody talk about it. So we'll be on there at the end of this month. And outside of that, I don't think there's anything else going on, but Brendan is going to speak about Notoros.io. Did I say that right?
Notoros,
Notoros.
all along those.
Pretty creative name. I think I misspelled your first name. I think I put Brandon. So sorry about that.
Everyone knows me that.
Okay.
So.
Brandon. But yeah, so Brendan, come on up here, and I'll let you take the floor.
Thanks. So my name is Brendan Laiben. I'm the CEO of Notoros Inc. We build Notoros, the new blockchain platform. I've been in the blockchain space since 2010, 2011, whenever my friend introduced me to Bitcoin. And he did a terrible job of telling me exactly how Bitcoin worked. And so I assumed that Bitcoin was just some password hashing mechanism that someone was using to basically brute force everyone else's passwords, because that's the only thing you'd use hashing for, I would assume, that you'd get paid for. And it just didn't make sense to me what was going on. But then later on, I got into almost an exactly same company like this one, like Crypto World, where we were doing, my college friends were selling Bitcoin miners and doing Bitcoin mining hosting out of their college dorm rooms. Eventually that grew into a warehouse in Rolla, Missouri. And eventually that expanded out to Denver, Colorado, where I worked with them over the summer to help them with heating and cooling and electrical distribution. I'm actually mechanical and aerospace engineering, classically trained from Rolla. I don't have a degree in computer science or computer engineering. That's my co-founder, Andrew Brick. He has those degrees. I am just like the deep tech guy. I understand all the math. I understand all of the ways that things and systems work together. So we all know what the promises of blockchain are, right? We've heard it for years. We've heard, okay, you're going to automate all of your finances. You're going to be able to do trustless interaction with your peers. We're going to completely revolutionize the World Wide Web. But really, what we've seen is that this is being used mostly just for DeFi, which is great. DeFi is great, but it's not fulfilling all of these promises of blockchain technology. And really the reason why this isn't happening is because blockchains are complicated. I mean, if I took a poll in this room, I don't think maybe half of you would be able to tell me all of the algorithms that are in use in order to secure a blockchain network, or any of the systems engineering requirements, or any of the crypto tokenomics sort of models that are required to make sure that you have a secure network. As you're building a blockchain application, when you look out for developers, there's about 2,000 developers in the entire world that are qualified to actually develop on any sort of blockchain platform. And that's just because you have to have a huge understanding of cryptography. You have to understand how these systems work, and you also have to have experience in the systems. And some of them have very specific programming languages. Like with Ethereum, you have to code in either Solidity or Serpent, Viper, and those all compile into their own bytecode, of course, but they're their own programming languages. You don't learn Solidity in college, you learn C++, or you learn JavaScript as you're becoming a web developer. And as you get into these other programming languages, it becomes very complicated. And so not only do you have to worry about finding talent, but you also have to worry about, as you're running the blockchain, they get more and more expensive, right? You have to store more data over time. You have to expand the network. You have to figure out all of these operational costs around running a blockchain. And it's just very complicated. So what we want to do is we want to open the door to universal adoption by just lowering that barrier to entry, making it simple, understandable for everyone to use, and providing a blockchain-based protocol that is accessible to all developers. So that's why we've developed Notoros. Notoros is what we believe the most distributed, most versatile distributed ledger that's ever been built. We work with any programming language. We have specific compliance abilities for the US markets that have not been available anywhere else. We scale to meet global demand. So as you add more nodes, we scale horizontally. Unlike Solana, which if you're familiar with how Solana scales Ethereum, they just dump the beefiest machine as they can onto this network. And then you just have to run the strongest machine that you possibly can. And that's how they push more transactions through. We think that doesn't work. That's not the Bitcoin model. That's not how any of these other ones work. We want to support small devices. And so we have a sharding first paradigm where you can add more and more nodes and add more Raspberry Pis or cell phone devices or laptop computers to this network. And all of those things contribute to the scalability of the entire network. The last things are mostly focused toward that user experience, and that we have very fast finality, under 1 second for most transactions. And then we have minimized the transaction fees. So the things that the ledger's actually doing have been optimized so that the cost of running that ledger is extremely low, which means that your transaction fee should also stay low. So the way that we offer this is in two methods. We have a privately hosted network that we can offer for businesses. This is typically what you would use for development purposes. Most people, whenever they're developing an app, they don't want to put it on the mainnet just yet, and they don't want to put it on a test net because then people can kind of see what they're doing. And if you're putting your code out there and it has a vulnerability, you're just kind of telling everyone ahead of time, hey, this vulnerability is going to be on mainnet eventually. And so we want to keep that private. We want to keep that secure before they roll out. And then once it's rolled out onto the public networks, we provide various services on top of that, so that you don't have to code up all of the infrastructure around talking to the blockchain, and your users don't have to do that, and also your applications don't have to worry about doing the things that are just boilerplate code applications that we see all the time in blockchain applications. So there's obviously a lot of competition out there. Luckily, all of the competition, though, focuses on a specific thing. There's scalability, people who are trying to push out more and more transactions on various networks. There's privacy, where as you're focusing on Monero sort of stuff, sort of like Cardano, where you're saying we want these execution models to be secure so that no one else can see them, or at least provable. There's also ones that focus on compliance, but those are very specific to how they're attacking a specific government compliance aspect. And then there's some that focus on developers. Ethereum's probably the best example of this. Ethereum was said, we're going to open up all sorts of programming paradigms on blockchain, and it is still a pain to use them as a developer. And so we focus on not having compromises. That's what we do. So we have scalability, we have privacy, we have compliance, and we have a developer friendliness. And we do all of these things without taking away from any of the other ones. And that's what none of our competition can say that they do. So like I said, we've got a lot of experience in DLT within the company. My co-founder, Andrew Brick, he has a background in mechanical or electrical and computer engineering. I'm mechanical and aerospace engineering. We've both worked in blockchain startups before. We've got about 4 or 5 different blockchain startups under our belt each. We've been in DLT for a combined 22 plus years, which is pretty much unheard of in this industry for developers. And we've also have 5 years of enterprise development. So that means that we were working on systems that were, I can't say the clients' names, but billions of dollars in annual revenue. If you want to like imagine who in the St. Louis market has that type of revenue, you can probably get pretty close to who we work with. And you can also see some of the various networks and applications that we've worked on in the blockchain space underneath there. So currently we're running a private beta out there. So if you want to access our beta platform, go ahead and give me a note and I can send you a code to get in. In the meantime, what we've done is we provide some tech demonstrations with various companies out there. The first one is Allison's. They provide sensors to the Air Force. And what we did is we showed they're able to take the data that their sensors are gathering and make a proof of it, post it on chain, and then do something with that proof. The really good thing about this demonstration, though, was that within 48 hours, 48 real world hours of them saying this is what we want to do, we provided them with a solution. And that's the real benefit of Notoros, is that you can program these things that quickly. And then that application is able to run next to an Ethereum application on the same network. And we can combine those paradigms. And that allows us to have a lot more flexibility. It's a similar value add that we provided to Sonified. Sonified proves that your solar panels are creating green energy. And when you're telling your electric company, hi, I'm creating green energy, give me a green energy credit, you can prove that you didn't just plug in a diesel generator to the grid. And that's what they do. So we showed them how to, they were trying to build out a tokenomics model as well as this decentralized proof system, and had to build it in the same ecosystem at the same time. So when you're running on Ethereum, you have to put all of this, all of their proofs had to be running it through Solidity, through the EVM, very complicated, very cost intensive. And Ethereum simply wasn't like designed to do that. But it was designed to handle tokens, and it was designed to handle token economies. And so what we allowed Sonified to do is we said, Sonified, do your proofs on this one application here, do all of your tokenomics on Ethereum, and because they're interacting on the same layer on our network, they have the same trustlessness, and they can then talk between each other. So we can actually show them how to do a proof on the one side, and then mint a token on Ethereum, and combine both of those actions into one transaction. And that allowed them to parallelize what they were doing on their development side. So they don't have to now focus on, how do we get our proof for our IoT sensors into Ethereum? They just put the proof on the chain, and then they can focus on building out the Ethereum stuff after that. For IRX Reminder, it was they have a smart pill dispenser. And what that means is that every single time that you open your pill bottle or you take out something or put something in, it keeps track of that. So your doctor and the pharmaceutical companies can kind of have an understanding of how you're using their prescription drugs, and also whether or not you need a refill. And their idea is that eventually you'll be able to have control over this data and sell it to maybe people who are doing research or something. Like if you have all of your biomedical information, as well as when you track your pill bottles opening and closing, you can probably get some pretty good data about your medical status. Of course, this has to be private information because we have HIPAA compliance issues there. And so we were able to show them that they were able to keep all that information private and run it on our network without exposing any of that data. Yes.
Is that in a pill bottle itself?
Yeah, it's a smart pill bottle. It runs. They have a little microcontroller at the little microprocessor at the top that records that, and then you offload that onto your cell phone, and the cell phone does the rest of the interaction on the internet. So for our roadmap, we've got private networks running. We're hoping to do some decentralized storage options, so that as you come in, you can say, well, I just want to run all of my application and store it on storage or store it on Filecoin. We want to be able to support all of the ecosystem, so we're adding that in the next few months, as well as private compute, so that you can do compute by side for your data set. So you don't have to show that if someone buys your data, they can run a machine learning model on it, and then they have access to all of your data though, and then they can resell your data. So what private compute allows us to do is they can train their machine learning model on that data without ever actually having to touch the data itself or having access to it. And of course, the people that have that data then don't see that machine learning model either. And so both parties get the benefits of that interaction, but they don't have any of the privacy complications that come with it. Now, later on, we'll be launching a mainnet for our public network. After that, we're going to be including fiat payment rails and then enterprise integrations. And this is really like your typical rollout plan for any decentralized network. We really have a broad vision though. We want to tackle all of the things that blockchains are trying to do and are currently failing to do. And we think that this holistic solution is really going to bring the ecosystem together and make it really drive adoption in a way that we haven't seen before. So that's it for that presentation. Happy to take questions. I can, not with this computer because the internet connection is a little wonky, but I can show you on my laptop if you all want a demonstration of the platform and how it runs. But I'm happy to take questions, happy to describe anything else you want. And also if you have questions about the general blockchain ecosystem, maybe you have an idea for a decentralized application, you just kind of want to toss it around, happy to hear about that as well.
It's just a quick question. So you don't have a token as of yet?
Correct.
And so my question is what's your consensus mechanism? You know, you're not obviously proof of work, you're proof of stake, there's no coin. I was just wondering how.
We have a plug and play consensus mechanism. So we are currently targeting proof of stake, but we also work with proof of work algorithms and pretty much any other type of consensus. What we do specifically is we say, once this transaction has been proven, it can then do all of these other things. So it's basically the transaction format itself is our innovation, not necessarily the interactions on the protocol level. So we're using a protocol called Cerberus, which is created by Radix. It's a London-based company, and they have a sharded mechanism for basically Tendermint to run proof of stake and accelerate. They're able to get about 1.2 million transactions per second in some of their closed environments. And we have optimized that transaction structure to make it even faster and even more scalable and do these things that they're trying to do, like include Ethereum transactions and include EOS transactions and include all the other types of transaction formats in this one specific package.
So if I wanted to run a node for your network, how difficult is it to set up? I mean, do you have user guides how to do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have actually I can run you through. This is probably a better description. I'm going to change my internet over just for a second. But I can show you, we have a walkthrough of our user guide. And in order to get set up and running a node, right now, like I said, we don't have a public network available. So we're just doing all private stuff. Mm-hmm. But in order to get running, all you have to do is download and run the Docker image. We provide fully containerized systems so that you don't have to worry about doing it as a sysadmin. We want to make the development experience extremely easy for everyone.
And then eventually, are you going to have some sort of token for your gas fee or your fees on the network, or how is that going to work?
On the decentralized network, on the public one, yes, there will be a token available. We don't have a token offering at the moment because it's not compliant to do so. You have to have a utility for your that's out there before you actually start selling it. And so we will be doing a token launch once we get to where we can have the decentralized network available. It'll be similar to how Bitcoin started. We'll be bootstrapping it ourselves and getting an initial mine on it.
Offering, basically. So you don't have a lot of VC who's got millions of tokens already locked up like Swan.
Correct. Our business model is that our VCs will get revenue through our services. So through the private hosting as well as through the developer services that we're running, kind of like Infura. We do the Infura thing. We do all of the Alchemy stuff. We do all of the things that those types of services provide. And so that's going to be the revenue model for our VCs. And so we don't have to worry about them disrupting the tokenomics and the purity of that system at the underlying layer. Whales are kind of a big problem in the industry. And so we don't want that disruption to be happening. So let me pull up this user guide here. And is it still? So this is our user guide. We made everything as simple as possible. Lots of text here, lots of text. But so you can see, like, we walk you through literally everything. If you don't know how to log in, we walk you through that. So once you've gotten started, we can send you some confirmation emails, let you log in. We have multi-factor authentication enabled. Various abilities you can connect to MetaMask. We have MetaMask functionality built in. That's just connecting the wallet, the dashboard. We enable you to two-factor security. You can have a profile on there as well, so we can do billing. It's your two-factor auth. I'm trying to get to the spot that's really cool, which is here's our transaction builder. So you've probably never seen an interface in Ethereum where you just say, here's my transaction, I want to send it. You have to go through MetaMask, you have to build it all up in an application and then tell the network what you want to do. We actually allow you to just put it in raw, because that's what most developers want, is we want an ability to kind of manipulate it on our own manually rather than having to write a whole bunch of code to go in there. Code comes after that, but this allows you to test it a lot better. So at the top, we have lots of metadata so that you're able to understand what the transaction is doing as you're building it up. We have various messages that you put in. So this is how you inform, okay, I'm sending an Ethereum transaction, or I'm sending an EOS transaction, or I'm sending a transaction specifically to this other application. We also have this thing called policies, which informs what transactions your transaction is related to. So if you have a whole bunch of transactions that are happening on the network, they all could be going to different applications, but then you could say my transaction needs these other ones to be confirmed before I want this one included. And one thing I didn't mention is how many people in here are familiar with the concept of miner extracted value? Great, I love this. So miner extracted value is whenever miners steal from the users because they have the ability to move transactions around before they're included in a block. So if you buy something off of an exchange, the price on the exchange moves a little bit, right? There's a little bit of slippage in your buy. And what a miner does is they note, oh, Bob here is going to be sending a transaction in. He wants to buy 1,000, let's say Dogecoin on an exchange. Well, I'm going to then, buy some Doge before he does, and then after he does, I'm going to sell it, because whenever he puts that buy order in, the price will go up. And if I can just capture that at the end, it'll drop the price back down, but it'll be back down to the exact same point it was before. And the problem with this is that Bob just lost out on all that slippage. All of that money that miner just made from that transaction, that's all of Bob's lost potential there on that opportunity. And this can get really, really bad for users if you're saying oh, I want a large transaction. You have to have a large amount of slippage available. Otherwise, that transaction might never settle on the exchange. And so the miners take advantage of this. They say, we're going to give you the most slippage possible, and then we're going to take all of the opportunity from that and put it into our pockets. And that's what miner extracted value is. And also, there's tons of ways this appears. What I just described is called the sandwich attack, where they're sandwiching your transaction with theirs. But it can also appear in different ways. So there are machine learning algorithms that are being used right now by miners who will say, as they see transactions coming in, they'll try to optimize the ordering of those transactions so that they can put one at the end or one at the beginning that optimizes for their outcomes and not necessarily for the users. And this is really a problem because the miners shouldn't care. The miners are there to put transactions in. They're there to say this one came before the next one, and they should have no other incentive mechanisms beyond just supporting the network itself. And so what we are able to do with this type of policy structure that we have in our protocol is we've completely eliminated that. There's no possible way for a miner to put his transaction in front of yours, because your transaction says, I'm coming after this one. And if they put one in between yours and that one, your transaction becomes invalid, that block becomes invalid, and that miner loses out on all the potential because they're not presenting a valid block. So moving on, so there's a lot of stuff in here. This is all just signing. You can see the MetaMask stuff coming up here, popping up. And the next thing we can show is our inspection. So this is our Ether scan, where you go in and you say, I want to look at a transaction. I want to see what it's been doing. And we display all that information that you saw before. So that metadata, those messages, those policies, and then some primitives in there. And that's how we'll be moving tokens and stuff around, is in those primitives. But again, we don't have those enabled at the moment. And the cool thing, though, is that we have this whole table. And if you go into Ethereum and you say, Ethereum, tell me how many transactions I've sent, Ethereum will say, you've sent 7 transactions. And if you say, okay, cool, when? It'll say, I don't know. I have no clue. That's not my job to tell you, because they did not build the Ethereum structures in a way that it could easily tell you that information. And they still have not changed it around after 8 years of building Ethereum. They have not yet figured out that this is kind of the thing that people want out of a blockchain, is to be able to find their transactions easily and find which ones are related to which other ones. And so that's what our state table allows you to do. Is the state table shows all of the applications that are running on the network. It shows what their specific states are in individual areas and how they're related to different transactions. So our state on the network, very bland, very basic. We're just counting numbers. We're just moving numbers up by 1 every single time we see a transaction come through. But when it becomes rich is when we apply a lens to it. So when we say, look at all of these transactions as if you were Ethereum, that's whenever our state table becomes really rich. And that's when we can see contract code being created, various account nonces. We can see your balances, ERC20 stuff, and build out like that. And we can see it on a VM level. So like specifically, we can dig into the RAM basically of the Ethereum virtual machine, and we can pull out a specific variable. And it just shows up in this table because all of your transactions are saying what variables they need. And therefore, we can track what variables are associated with which transactions, and then we can back them out and walk them through the entire network. And that's it there. But that's most of the functionality we have on our UI right now. Of course, if you remember when Ethereum first launched, there was no UI. There was barely a command line interface. And right now we've got some pretty decent UIs, but none of them that really work for developers. And we think that this particular interface is something that developers are really going to love and enjoy because we can provide them with rich data and very accessible ways of interacting with the chain.
So how many developers you guys got?
In the company, it's myself and my co-founder, and we had one developer who's a contractor for us. He's our front-end developer actually, and built up most of this, the way this interface looks. But as far as getting people on the actual network itself, we have about 25 people who are using our beta net at the moment and who are interacting on it, as well as a couple other companies that are doing private stuff. So we provided them with a Docker container they run locally and test it out and interact with it.
Okay, I'm a newbie.
Yes.
To all this stuff, so. Who's your competition?
Every other layer 1 that's out there. Ethereum is a big competition for us. Solana, because they're scaling, even though Solana's not great, people still use it. There's obviously the layer 2s that are out there. Polygons that would technically be a competitor, and Loopring would be a competitor. There's the just basically anyone that's out there that has a smart contract capable blockchain would be a competitor. However, we've worked with all these chains before that are our competitors, and we understand the development experience behind them, and we also understand that they suck. So I like to tell people I don't want to build a layer 1 blockchain. I did not get into the industry to build a blockchain because I don't you never ever want to roll your own crypto is the rule. But unfortunately, the stuff that's out there doesn't work. It doesn't work for developers. I had to rewrite the same application 4 different times for 4 different clients and came out with the exact same results every time because it just wasn't, it was boilerplate code and it had to be done. And there was no existing solution in the space for it. And there's tons of repetition as developers are going through this. And if you don't understand the patterns, you're going to mess it up along the way too. So we don't want that to happen with developers. So we just said, we're going to provide you with all this boilerplate code. We're going to make it easy. We're going to get rid of all of your need to understand anything about blockchain and get you down to where you're just doing basic programming stuff again. No crypto involved, no worrying about, is the state secure? Is this going to be private? Will it do this? We just say if you want it to be a private VM, check the box. Done. Just say privacy enabled. Yes. and it goes. And if you want to be tracking a whole bunch of different states around, plug in the state plugin. If you want to do derivatives of it, plug in the derivative state plugin. And it's just boxes you check now, rather than having to build these systems yourself from scratch each time.
So is your revenue model, is this a subscription for developers or how you?
Yeah, so we provide a freemium model, so you get a base level of interactivity for free. And then once you, which should be like good enough to do your proof of concept sort of stuff, like get your company going and rolling for free. But then once you get up to the higher usage levels, we start charging you, but kind of like what Infura does. So you're able to connect to Infura, which connects your MetaMask to like the Ethereum blockchains and their testnets. But once you start using it a whole bunch, they're going to start charging you. They're going to start rate limiting you. We just follow that same model. Once your company is big enough that you're actually putting a strain on our cloud resources, we start asking you to pay for it.
Would you define the layers?
Yeah, so layer one is, and this is a matter of perspective, really. Layer one is like your core, this chain needs nothing else. There is nothing else that goes on. There's no secondary side chains, which is like another network that runs and then posts proof on it. There's no roll-ups that are needed. It's all of the data is natively being validated and has consensus at one particular like cohesive network level. And that's layer one. Layer two is the things that are built on top of that. So you have things like Polygon, various roll-up solutions, Loop Ring, and other like side chains. Polkadot is similar to a layer two, layer one model. Their layer one is their core, Polkadot's core network, and then all of their side chains would be counted as a layer two solution because they rely on this core network in order to do anything. And Cosmos is the same way. If you get rid of these core networks at the layer one, the layer twos don't work. And that's really what makes a layer two, is that it needs a layer one, otherwise it cannot work at all. There's also higher levels they're calling layer threes, which are layer two bridges. So if you want a bridge between layer two, that's technically another layer two, but we're calling them layer threes because it's getting a little weird. And then there's also layer zero, which is just your protocol, like talking back and forth to itself. Some applications are trying to get into this like networking stack layer, and there's optimizations to be had, but also the internet's been running for 25 years and people have gotten really good at doing the internet. And so I don't think that's something that we can really, get too much more juice out of that. But the layer, that is like kind of how the layers are separated right now. Layer zeros are your protocol, like talking back to your nodes. Layer one is the full network by itself that doesn't need anything else. And layer twos are the networks that are built that require a layer one in order to do what they're actually doing or have the security that they want.
So you're the layer one?
We're a layer one, right? Mm-hmm. So, yes.
How does that work with Cosmos exactly? If that is a layer one, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What about all the other things that rely on Cosmos, such as like Chronos Coin, for example? Isn't that a layer one? Or would that be considered a layer two, since it's built off Cosmos?
Yeah.
Chain?
Right. So the Cosmos has a sidechain model. So there's a central Cosmos core, and it is doing the proofs of the Cosmos sidechains. And the Cosmos sidechains, they're application-specific chains. So they're running a very specific application through a blockchain mechanism, and then posting that result back to the Cosmos main chain. So the Cosmos main chain has the security and is providing the security to these side chains along there. But the side chains themselves have an intermediate sort of level of security because they're validating themselves in the space between talking back to the Cosmos core. So this is where it gets fuzzy because technically it's not another layer. It's an interactivity thing, but it's qualified as a layer two because it requires this second network in order for them to work. So the Chronos Coin would be like technically a layer two solution. But it's a sidechain of Cosmos, so some people will call it layer one or layer 1.5, just because it does have that direct connection. But Cosmos core doesn't reach out to that one. It does not require the Chronos chain or anything. So that's why I make it the distinction that those chains are layer two, and the core is layer one.
Okay, thank you.
Good explanation.
Thank you.
You said there's 2,000 people that are qualified to be developers in this space for blockchain. How would you define qualified, and like how many of those people are actually like in the space versus like working on other things?
Yeah, so qualified in my mind means that you have at least 3 years of experience, like actively working on a protocol level, that you can explain exactly what the Ethereum virtual machine's doing. Most things are built on Ethereum, so like if you can't explain how Ethereum works, then I don't expect you to understand how anything else works either. So there are some questions I like to ask, like, what's the state transition function for your transaction in Ethereum? And people like, if they can walk me through, I'll be like, okay, that's pretty good, probably pretty good. But then you ask them, what's the various zero knowledge proofs that can be accomplished? There's things like Shor's algorithm and Shamir's secret sharing algorithms. Those are very basic sort of zero knowledge proof systems. They're well known within the general computing ecosystem as well. They're used for a lot of basic security mechanisms. And if you don't know those, then that's kind of like, okay, you're probably just still a junior developer, because by the time you're doing senior developer stuff and able to understand this, you've already encountered those things before in your research or just like as a side project. Higher level, I think that if you have an understanding of tokenomics, that's really important too. So the systems design theory behind how you build relationships between your peers on the network. If you have it's great if you can program, but if you don't understand what your application is doing or how it impacts the real people, then you can't code for the edge cases. And the edge cases are what really like kills a blockchain application. It's the 1 in a billion chance that someone finds the hole in your code. Well, they're incentivized to find the hole in your code. There's a bunch of money out there for them to do that. And so you just can't have any holes in your code. It's just not something that you can do. So if you're not capable of understanding how to build code that has 0 holes, and you don't have the experience of like going through that process of like security auditing someone else's contract and being able to analyze it, that also puts you back in that junior developer spot. But if you're able to do all of those things, if you can do tokenomics, if you can tell me what some zero knowledge proof systems are and how they work, and if you can explain to me how the Ethereum virtual machine works, then you're probably a pretty good developer, and you're probably one of those like several thousand people. All of those people are in the space right now. I would say 9 out of 10 of them probably are actively working in this space, because the salary range is about $250,000 to $400,000 for those people. Just because like it's worth it. It's worth it to have those people on your team for that price. If you're moving millions of dollars around, you want to be sure that no one's going to steal your millions of dollars, and that's worth $500,000 a year. Does that explain?
Yeah, that answers a lot of stuff. But I'm not a super like techy person. Do DApp developers need to know like all of that stuff, or is that just like people working on like layer 1s? Layer 2s?
Right now, DApp developers need to know all that stuff.
Okay.
If you're building anything that touches the chain, you need to know those things. We want to make it so that's not the truth. We want to make it so that you don't have to know those things. That all of that security aspects, all of that knowledge has been abstracted away from you, so that you're looking for the functional requirements of your application, saying, does it need to be secure? Yes. Do I need a zero knowledge proof? Yes. And then just pick the one that does the correct solution for you, because you shouldn't have to program those things yourself, because most people just can't, right? And if you do it once correctly, it's just an algorithm. Just don't repeat yourself is a common thing in programming. So we want to make sure that no one in the space is repeating themselves, especially if we're all building on the exact same network. Like there's really no reason to like waste effort that way, especially with everything being open source now. So that's what we want to make it, is that in the future, you'll be able to pull someone off the street and say like, hey, do you know how to type? Okay, cool. Come program my blockchain application for me.
Yeah. So is that what sets you apart from like ETH after the merge and like Cardano after it has like its updates and stuff like they're not focusing on developer experience in that same way and making it where low level programmers can design good apps.
Yep, absolutely. I would say that's absolutely true. While we are technically, our metrics are stronger in almost every single regard, the actual benefit that someone will have over going to Ethereum is this developer experience. Right now, Ethereum, Cosmos, they have all this value locked up in them, and so there's really good motivation just to go develop on those networks. I'm actually working with Andrew McDowell, the Polygon Guild rep here. He does the monthly Polygon Guild meetings here. And we're working on a Polygon application because there's money in this space looking for this application. We said, well, Polygon's going to pay us to do it. Let's do it there. Obviously, I can now take that application once it's done and put it onto Notoros, because we accept all the applications and can run all the applications. natively, and so it's not a whole loss. But like that's the reality of the situation is that these existing networks out there, they're the incumbents, and it's just a little bit of a struggle to get up against the incumbents. But if there's like millions of developers, billions, millions, probably tens of millions, I would say. Let's try to get in that range. Tens of millions of developers. So there's 500 times as many developers out there that could use Notoros as opposed to those other networks. And that's just that technology adoption curve where we're still in the early adopters phase. So there's still like 90% of the market has not yet used blockchain. And we know that most of the market will eventually be using blockchain. And so that's the people that we're targeting. It's not necessarily the people who are currently using it right now, but the people who will be using it in the future, who want to build applications on it in the future.
What's your anticipated time to like a real launch?
We expect, so there's some legal regulatory things going on, and we expect that at the end of this year will be a good time for us to be launching a public network. Right now, we're going through the National Geospatial Agency Accelerator Program. The NGA has a new office here downtown in St. Louis, and they're focused on bringing geospatial intelligence capabilities into the city as a focus area. So we've got like plant science from Monsanto, and then geospatial are going to be the big focus areas for St. Louis. And through this accelerator, we're talking with the DoD, we're talking with like DARPA specifically, various energy companies. We've talked to Ameren before, and bringing the technology to that level, to the scope of like federal government as well as the utilities. That's something that only Notoros can do because of our compliance features, because of our scalability, and because of our interoperability between the different applications that you build. And so that's the other way we're going to be driving adoption, is kind of from a top-down approach. Well, if the U.S. government's using it, that's game over. If the digital dollar is backed on Notoros, it doesn't matter how popular Ethereum is, because you're going to be using the digital dollar for every single market transaction in the U.S. And that's something that only our network will be able to support.
So are you fully funded with VCs, or are you going to be going out
We're
crowdfunding and
we're bootstrapped entirely. So I've got a decent amount of Ether, and also some development projects on my own that made some decent money. And so we're entirely self-funded, bootstrapped from ourselves. We are talking with a couple of VCs right now. We have a $2.5 million offer right now on the table that we're working through. This is part of that regulatory stuff that we're kind of getting everything in line for. We want to make sure that as we roll out, there's literally no issues whatsoever with this. And in the crypto space, if you have like, it's kind of the, what's the conflict of interest? You know, if you seem like you have a conflict of interest, you do have a conflict of interest. It's the appearance of impropriety that is improper. And so we want to make sure that everything that we do does not give off that appearance. And so bootstrapping it and funding it ourselves has been a successful mechanism for doing so. And between the three of us, we've gotten the entire product developed. We've got the full suite running. It runs on Google Cloud. It can run in AWS. It can run. It's just done. We just need to put some tokenomic models behind it now and get some of the last few security parameters wrapped up. And so that's why we're targeting the end of this year for our mainnet launch. But it could be next year. Definitely will not be later than 2023, though, for sure. Just because it's pretty much done. There's only so much more to be done. And at some point, you can just open source it and give it out and say, yeah, this is what Satoshi did. We're pre-mining on it for about a month, and then everyone else gets to join, and we'll just open up the thing for everyone to come and do. So that's probably how we're going to be rolling out our decentralized network and giving it to just so that everyone can have access to it on a fair playing field.
So it's containerized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we built it. We built it so that you don't have to worry about what machine you're running it on. If you want to run it on a Mac, you want to run it on a Linux machine or a Windows machine, Docker runs on all of those things. So just run it in. We have Docker containers available. We also have JavaScript libraries, so you can interact with this inside of your browser. You don't ever have to like code in C++ or Java or any of that stuff in order to interact with it. It runs on JavaScript, and most of the interactions are using traditional enterprise level practices. Like all of our databases are Redis and MongoDB, if you're familiar with those. We also provide you with the UIs to explore those databases. So if you're working on Ethereum, they use LevelDB inside of their Geth instance. So that's the thing that runs the network for Ethereum is typically Geth is the program. LevelDB is inside of that, and that's just a very fast database, but it also doesn't have any of the functionality that is, enterprise developers look for, because it's just a very basic open source sort of database system. And if you don't have all of the things that developers are looking for, and you don't support these like better database systems, then it's just hard. It's hard to interact with those things. Like I said, you can't dig into the Ethereum database and see like what the state at any given point is. They don't support that. You have to go through their Geth software to talk to the database, and then that will give you the answer rather than just querying the database directly. And that just doesn't make sense to us. As a developer, you almost always just talk to a database directly rather than having to go through some other service around there.
What kind of bandwidth and uptime do you need to have?
So technically, our protocol allows you to go offline at any time. Because it's sharded, our validators can break off. They can become disconnected. They operate on their own shards, and then they can come back together and resolve that consensus because they understand exactly who's in charge of what section of the network and validating what section of the network at any given time. So if I'm in North America, I'm going to talk to validator A, and if you're in Europe, you're going to talk to validator B, and if you're in Asia, you're going to talk to validator C. Well, if A, B, and C don't talk to each other and they're only processing transactions within their certain regions, it doesn't ever matter if they never come to consensus back to each other again, because all their transactions never interact with each other. It's only once someone wants to send money from like Asia to Europe to North America that those validators have to come back and talk to each other again and start resolving what that transaction, that higher level transaction that's going across all of the shards is actually doing. So you can, as a validator, as long as you're connected to the other validators that are kind of in your same scope, then you can continue mining on it. And we want to make it so that if there is an attack where all of your validators go offline or become disconnected, or there's a, heaven forbid, like the whole internet goes down, that the protocol should still be able to come back up as soon as someone connects, as soon as you're connected again to it, and should be more or less able to resolve any conflicts at that time.
Can you have like a validator on a Raspberry Pi connected to a cable modem? Or am I going to need like fiber going into the house?
Well, obviously, as a validator, if you want to be able to validate all the transactions that you're responsible for, but you can select how much of the network you want to validate. So you can say, I only want to validate like 1% of the network, this specific slice, and all the transactions that you'd be able to validate those, and you would scale that to the size of your hardware. So you could run it on a Raspberry Pi, you could run it on a cable modem, or you could run it on a dial-up modem even. And as long as you're just able to process the transactions that are coming in for your specific shards, then you're able to mine on them and create profit off of that. We're not going to kick you out because you don't have the proper hardware by our specs. We're going to give you the shot, same as if you have a Raspberry Pi mining Bitcoin. You can mine Bitcoin with a Raspberry Pi. The odds of you mining a block are just very, 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 very small relative to what everyone else is out there doing. So if you have a validator that's out there that has a huge, 4 or 5 server farms worth of computers to start validating the network, they're probably going to get more opportunities to validate more transactions and get more mining revenue than you will, but your Raspberry Pi will still be competitive to that same degree of security in the same way that Bitcoin is.
When you guys get your tokenomics, is there a cap on the tokens?
So we're not 100% certain on how the cap will work. The way that I want it to happen is for there to be a mining rewards token, and then a transaction requirements token, and then an automated market maker between those two things, so that as you get rewards, if you hold on to them and there's just like no transactions going on in the network, then you shouldn't be paid a whole bunch to validate something that isn't happening. And so you would have to, the AMM would balance that out for us. So your users are going to have a more or less consistent transaction price, but then the validators are going to get rewarded differently based on the progress of the network at any given time, rather than like if you're if you're mining Bitcoin right now, you're making a ton of money just on transaction fees, and you're still getting like 12 and a half Bitcoin now. Versus in the beginning, you were making like 50 Bitcoin, but there was just no transactions going through. So the network was literally just paying these miners to do nothing. And there wasn't a lot of incentive for the miners then to expand the Bitcoin network. They weren't going out and like trying to force people to do transactions, because as long as they run their machines, they're fine. And that was just like, it's okay, but it's not great for adoption. It doesn't push adoption along. And so we think that this mechanism whereby the volume of transactions at any given time is what's impacting the miners' ability to cash out their funds. I think that dynamic is going to make it so that the miners will incentivize other people, and like they'll fund more projects in order to build the transaction volume on the network greater. Any other questions?
Going back to the boilerplate code stuff, does that mean that you're looking to just like have to be able to port their stuff over from other layer ones, or that there'll be interoperability as well?
So there's interoperability in the way that like layer 2s exist. So you'll use a layer 2 to bridge between the layer 1s. But right now, if you run an Ethereum application, you can literally just change one line of code in your application and it will run on our machine. So we do hope though that in the future, you won't even need to have that like one line of code in there. You'll just be like, okay, well, it might not even be Ethereum that people are running in the future, because Ethereum's, yeah, okay. But if you're able to program in C++, why wouldn't you program in like C++ or Java or any of these other programming languages if it works just as well and it's interoperable with all these other things as well? So that's kind of our approach. Is that right now, yeah, we support them, but there's so much more available.
What do you think your biggest challenge right now is?
Well, I think right now the biggest challenge is getting people to understand the various applications of blockchain technology beyond just DeFi. So there's obviously everything kind of boils down to DeFi in the end, because you want to incentivize people to do certain actions. You want to disincentivize them from taking other actions. But at a high level, we can do things like enable the gig economy. So we could replace Uber and Lyft and make it so that, all of these drivers who are running 4 or 5 delivery apps or rideshare apps on their phone, they are rideshare drivers. Like that's what they are doing. They're not an Uber driver or a Lyft driver. They're rideshare drivers. And if we can have a blockchain ecosystem where you're able to connect these rideshare drivers and eliminate Lyft or eliminate Ubers from that being a middleman, those drivers can make a lot more money. And you can probably get that ride cheaper. And you can see reputations, you can have more security, and then we can expand beyond that and say, okay, well, if you've got people who are able to just deliver people, then what about goods and what about food? Well, suddenly all of those people no longer need a middleman. They can make more money. They can have more money in their pockets, costs you less. No one likes to pay $30 for delivery for a $5 meal. And so if we can incentivize people properly through a decentralized application, we can eliminate the need for these higher level companies and these middlemen who are just there to do what a blockchain would do, which is just prove that this guy's trustworthy, prove that so-and-so has enough money to pay for the trip, and then resolve it at the end once both parties have reached a conclusion about it. And that's the real potential I see behind blockchain technology, is the elimination of these middlemen who do nothing apart from just connect other people to other people.
Cool. Well, time is up. Is there a way to get a hold of you? Do you have social media, Twitter?
Yes, we do. We have we are at Notoros DLT on Twitter. Also, you can find me. I'm at Brendan_Laiben, Laiben. But you can follow us on at Notoros. We also have.
You're on LinkedIn too.
Also on LinkedIn, yes. I don't check LinkedIn as often as I should, unfortunately. And our website, notoros.io, it runs on Google App Engine, so I'm probably the first guy to look at it today. But you can also go and sign up for our newsletter, and all of our socials are there as well. We do have a Reddit. I haven't checked on the Reddit in a while. It doesn't get a lot of activity. But also we have this is Andrew. No, this is Andrew Brick.
Okay.
I only work with guys' names Andrew.
Yeah.
But that's our. He runs through our demo there. if you guys want to see it. Also, yeah, if you want to sign up for the beta, we can get you guys into our beta net. But
All right, thank you so much, Brendan, for.
Do you want to check, see if there's any questions?
Oh, no,
You have it in there.
I don't think I have it. Oh, let me see. What does he mean by check the box?
We're just talking about like if you want security, you can just check the box.
Do you mean custom? What do you mean by check the box?
there's rather than having to do programming, we offer you a UI. So you can just put it it can be in your code. You can say privacy equals true, basically, in your code, or you'll be able to fill out a form for your application. And then one of the boxes on there will be use private compute or use state plugin or any of the other plugins that we provide for your application.
Yeah, it'd be cool if Notoros becomes the next Ethereum, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
crypto world, first store in the U.S. and Notoros the first. And we're all doing it here in the St. Louis area, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, thank you. He'll be around here if you guys have more questions. But thank you for being here today. Like I said earlier today, we'll be at Venture Cafe this Thursday if you guys want to participate or attend. And then next week we also have another speaker talking about Web3 platform. I don't know the name, but I'll get that to you guys in the email. But yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.